just stay connected with us and you'll find out more about the other events as well. All right, so Zoom room etiquette. I won't read all of them, but just please remember to unmute and mute your microphone appropriately. So unmute if you want to talk, mute if you don't want to talk. Share your video if you can. We really want to make this as interactive as possible, so we would love to see your face. And absolutely put your LinkedIn link right inside of the comments. The whole point of this is getting us connected. The really neat part of us being virtual is that you can meet people from literally all over. So let's get connected and make sure you put your link down there. And then you guys can read the rest. Next slide. All right, upcoming events. So the ones that I really want to highlight is that we're gonna have a virtual happy hour with a lot of investors. So I'm an entrepreneur, and if you are, have some free time on your hands during COVID and you wanna start a business, this would actually be a really cool opportunity for you to come and learn about what are all of the Cleantech investors looking for and get to learn more about them. And then we also have a happy hour, speed mentorship happy hour coming up. So for me, I've really been trying to invest in myself during this time period and meeting new people. So that would be a great opportunity if you're also working on that as well. And definitely visit our website, sign up for our newsletter, because that way you can be in the know of all of the events. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our speaker, who he coaches CEOs, executives for the Obama Foundation, the Gates Foundation, Techstars, Talentism, and many others. Prior to this, he was a 2018 On Being Fellow, a finalist for the 2017 American Express Leadership Prize, and the former CEO of Starting Block, which if you're not familiar with them and you're into impact, it's an amazing organization. He is a graduate of California Institute of Technology with a degree in mechanical engineering. And without further ado, please welcome my good friend, my leadership coach, Cesar Gonzalez.
Thank you, Camille. Oh, what a lovely introduction. It's really good to be here. Excited to tell you a little bit about what I do, and in particular, sharing with you some of these concepts around moving from confusion to clarity. Maybe just as an aside, like I want to praise Camille and the work that she's doing, and it's really an honor to be working with her, and acknowledge the moment in history that we're in, this time of deep transition, of the pandemic, of so much of the pain, of oppression coming to the surface, and George Floyd's murder, and so on. I just want to acknowledge that that's the context in which we are in this room. Next slide, please. So a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Peru. I grew up in South America, Europe, and Africa before coming to the States for college. And I've been all over the map. You probably heard I have a background in tech, and then kind of worked in biotech and startups for a while, and now have come to this mission to cultivate more aliveness in the world. And what I mean by that is literally more aliveness. There's less than half the trees on Earth that there were when humans kind of became aware, and there's half the volume of fish. Like I want more life on Earth, but I also mean more aliveness in human systems, in organizations. What would it look like if what we were really cultivating was not growth or success or profit, but aliveness in organizations? And so that's what I'm about, even within people. What does greater health look like? And the mechanism, where I'm coming from, is this organization, Talentism, which exists to unleash human potential. Imagine if we were all really operating kind of on all cylinders and giving our greatest gifts to the world, what that would look like. It's one of the greatest tragedies, I think, for humanity today, how much of our potential is actually squandered. And so we're looking at Talentism, at how you do that systemically, and how we started that is to look at coaching and how coaching can really help people unleash potential. So next slide, please. So I want to start this conversation about how you move from confusion to clarity, which is one of the ways you really unleash potential, by bringing you to an example, a really simple one, because from the simple we can go to the complex. And the simple example is I want you to take a moment and just imagine the last time you were walking down a street or a hallway and you happen to stumble or trip over something. So you're kind of walking and you kind of stumble or trip. And maybe not the last time, but like kind of one of the more memorable ones. I remember I was in high school once and I like tripped over my own feet and like I was so embarrassed. I started running. I'm like, I meant to do that. Look at me, I'm running now. Right? And so in this moment, right, what is happening? You're moving along and you think you're going to be walking just fine. And all of a sudden you trip and stumble. And that is unexpected. So what is happening doesn't match your expectations. You were hoping to just walk along. And this is what I call a moment of confusion, what we call in our model moment of confusion. And confusion is happening all the time to everyone, every day. And it is actually a productive feature of the human brain. Because when we get confused, we pay attention. And hopefully we learn something. So all learning begins with a moment of confusion. Right? So you might have tripped over this thing, and maybe you go back and look and see if there was something on the floor so that you can trip over, or maybe there isn't, and you notice that your shoe is broken, or maybe you realize, oh, I'm always tripping over my feet, and you like go get it checked out, and you have one leg that is longer than the other, right? These are like productive ways to explore your confusion and learn something. But actually, what usually happens is our first reaction is the brain wants to answer the question about what happened right away, and it makes up stories, and it's like, who tripped me? Is usually a first thing, or like, holy crap, I hope I didn't hurt myself, right? Or then, and then kind of look up and you're like, did anybody see? You're not even worried about what happened. You're worried about whether anybody saw you trip, right? There's this shame piece. Or, you know, or kind of the blame thing. You see the person that like was watching you and somehow you're feeling angry at them, even though they had absolutely nothing to do with it, right? Like these are the kinds of things that happen when we have confusion. We kind of jump to a narrative about it. Someone was wrong, someone was bad, the floor, the sidewalk was broken. So this is what I mean by BSL narratives. It's bad, stupid, lazy. It's the brain's shortcut to make up a story about what it think happened, and it's usually kind of the quickest one that we have. So as I was saying, next slide, please. Confusion is simple. It's a moment when our reality
Alexa,
feels...
what time is it?
Sorry, yes, how are we on time? Did someone ask a question? Okay, I'll keep going. Confusion is a moment when reality fails to meet our conscious expectations. Expectations don't match reality. And when this happens, we have the opportunity to either learn or tell ourselves a story that just kind of helps us feel better. Next slide, please. This is what I mean about the 3C model. The path from confusion, you have two paths that you can take. The path to certainty, which I kind of use as a negative word, and the path to clarity, which is a how you learn word. So certainty is, I'm sure I know what happened. Someone tried to trip me. Clarity is like, I wonder what happened. I'm gonna go see if the rug was wrinkled or something. You know, and we've heard about this path to certainty before in many other names. It's a fight, flight, freeze response. It's a bad, stupid, lazy narrative. You're trying to seek safety and, you know, protect your ego. I was embarrassed. Like, I hope nobody saw me. And what happens when you like walk this path is it becomes fragile because you're actually not really matching to reality. You're not realizing that we have one leg that's longer than the other. And it keeps happening and you keep getting mad at the people who are building the floors. Whereas the path to clarity looks like, okay, I really want to understand. I had the feelings, I'm going to move on. I want to understand what happened. And so I'm going to go ask questions. I'm going to recognize that I was confused, that I had feelings, I had a moment of confusion, but I really want to learn. And so you engage in experiments. You go measure your legs. You go take a look at the bottom of your shoes to see if your sole is coming off. You look at the floor and see if something could actually happen. And you realign your expectations. Okay, I should get a shoe that's bigger. I should get someone to fix this rug and so on. And during this path is the one that helps you achieve goals, while the other path achieves fragility, right? And why did I use such a simple example? It's just to help you understand the concept, but this is happening in the work world all the time. It's happening to CEOs, to executives, it's happening to all of us. And the way it happens is something happens that doesn't match our expectations. You know, oh, why is this person taking so long to answer my email? Oh, someone delivered work and it's not up to my standards. Expectations don't match reality. Oh, I didn't get the funding that I was going out for. Oh, I thought my review was going to be great and like my boss really laid into me. Expectations don't match reality, and we go into a moment of confusion. And this is the opportunity. You can use that moment of confusion to learn, but it's hard because what you want to do is go to this certainty path to be like, gosh, my boss is just, he's bad. You know, my coworker is lazy. They don't answer emails on time. And we're not asking what actually happened. Does that make sense? Okay, next slide, please. Your fulcrum, your spot of power in this whole thing is starting with yourself. Clarity starts with self, not with the other person in the room. So if you're having this thing and your boss is the bad person, you probably have an opportunity to come back and be like, okay, where am I at? And the way you get to clarity is just by asking good questions and asking, like, coming back to a place of centeredness and asking better questions of yourself and of others. So you'll just kind of go slowly through these. There's a bunch of questions. Whoever's clicking can just do one every few seconds. You can ask questions of yourself like, where am I? Am I clear with myself? What do I actually need to reflect on? Maybe I actually don't know what the goal is. You know, I try to think like, okay, what is it that my boss wants me to achieve? I don't know. I need to clarify the goal. Can I describe the goal to myself and others? You know, maybe you have expectations about performance of yourself or of another person, and they're not being met that you didn't know. Often these expectations are actually unconscious. Like you don't know until you trip over them, right? Oh, I needed them to do, you know, better slides and like better color matching and so on. Or I needed someone to write a better email. You know, what are your expectations of people's behaviors? The language that they use at work, the tone, the way that you would like to be treated, how quickly people get back to you. You know, do we collaborate on things and have meetings more often, or are people individual performers? These are expectations of behavior. And if it doesn't match your expectation, let's say like I'm an individual performer, I go to a place that's really collaborative. I'm like, why are all these people talking to each other all the time? Why do they waste so much time? That's my bad, stupid, lazy narrative that it's their fault. But actually it's that I have an expectation that people should be individual achievers, and it just doesn't fit in that organization. So that's a behavioral expectation. Also, you have expectations around quality. You know, I always perform at the highest level. Even in writing an email, there's not going to be a single typo. And my CEO writes an email with a typo, and I'm like, this guy is incompetent. Because, you know, you look at him, you're like, my expectations of quality are up here. And, but I'm confused because he's getting the work done. He's raising the funds. So there's this narrative thing. And, you know, if you explore, maybe he's like, yeah, I don't care about spelling. I've realized I can still achieve my goals. Another place where confusion often happens is maybe we're very clear on our expectations about goals, about behaviors, but we're assuming that other people have the same thing in their heads. So I expect people to respond within 48 hours and they don't. And I'm like, I'm really clear. You should always respond within 48 hours, but I haven't said it to anyone. And so when they take 3 days or 4 days, I get mad and I think they're lazy, but maybe they'll do it if I just tell them. Who knows? Maybe they won't, and then I can explore what actually is happening. And then the last one is people forget all the time. So even if you're communicating your expectations, hey, the goal is to, you know, do this funding proposal by next month on the 15th, people forget. And so how frequently are you re-communicating your expectations on goals, on behaviors? Because they'll forget and they'll go off in another direction. You guys are going to forget all of this except some thoughts in the back of your head by tomorrow. And so if I had the expectation that you're going to remember everything I say, I'm going to get confused again. I'm going to fail. Does that make sense? So this is the thing, is creating clarity starts with you and asking yourself questions and getting to clarity so you can then help other people to get to create clarity. Because confused people confuse other people, and it creates this systemic roiling of confusion that leads to more fragility, assumptions about what the culture is and so on. Next slide, please. So that's a super quick overview. I usually do trainings, you know, I have a 2-hour training. I have a 6-month training on clarity coaching. Like, this is just a really simple base concept at the core of a lot of this. And if you're interested in learning more, there's a lot of resources on the Talentism website. There's a great hour-long webinar. There's an 1.5-hour interview with our CEO about some of these concepts. There's other articles. So feel free to jump into that. Or if you'd like to talk to me, I am so happy to do an exploratory conversation complimentary with anyone on this call. Either about coaching itself and what it would look like to do coaching, or if you're just curious about the concepts and want to dig into something meaty with me, I'm also up for that. Thank you so much. And how was I on time?
Thank you so much, Cesar. All right, team. So from here, we're going to do a breakout session to explore a little bit more about the concepts that Cesar brought up. So we're going to be doing 2 people per breakout room. And the topic is to think about a recent time when you were frustrated or angry with someone. Take a moment to describe the situation, and then your partner will ask you open-ended questions to help you understand what actually happened. You want to do this about after 5 minutes and then switch roles. And I really think, really think through some times that has happened to you. I can think of some of this myself. And yeah, and then we'll see you back in here.
All right, I am almost ready to send you all out to your breakout rooms. Please stay in them. You do have the option to come back to the main room, but I don't have a way to send you back easily. So please don't hit that button when it pops up on your screen. All right, and I will be sending you all out shortly. How is the breakout room?
We had a lot of technical difficulties. Yeah.
No.
And I think I'm back early because Tanisha, her signal dropped completely. So she dropped off. So she's back getting her time.
Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. Hey, Tanisha. Maybe. Oh.
Hey. Leah, they kicked us out.
I know.
Yes, and the answer is yes.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. While Camille gets back here and gets herself situated, I'll just fill the space in the room. Camille, you ready?
I'm back.
All right.
Alrighty, we're gonna take, I believe it's about 10 minutes or so to do a share out. So yeah, go ahead and unmute your mic. This is the opportunity to share anything came up during your time with your group. Who wants to go first?
I'll go. Leah and I have very similar things that bothered us recently, just the racial unrest that we are going through in our country. And believe it or not, we ran into the same issue, kind of like how to talk to people, getting frustrated with people we love around us that may have views that are different from ours, or that it upsets and makes a hostile environment to talk about things. So we discussed that and maybe a lack of grace and space that maybe we didn't give because everything was kind of fact and emotionally driven at the same time. Like it wasn't just emotional, but we watching footage at the same time. So we talked a lot about our responses to people, and a lot of the opening questions were like, why did we feel that way? What did we actually expect from people? So it was nice to hear it out loud. And of course, I'm Black, Leah is not Black. And it was interesting that we had the same issue, just dealt with it 2 different ways.
That's my co-founder, y'all. I love you, Yvette. Thanks for sharing.
Awesome.
Oh, I love that. I love that a lot. Anyone else?
This is Meredith. I'll share. Melly and I were talking, and we both had a similar issue in different contexts, and it was about communicating with someone else or and just not knowing what was basically going on the other side, and feeling frustrated, not knowing how to get that information, I guess, and feeling a little bit constrained about just, going and asking for for reasons of various kinds, just didn't really feel like that was a good approach. And so that was really interesting. There were two very different situations, but we were both, kind of experiencing the same, the same feelings, and the same, kind of the same stuff came up about, insecurity and, really wanting a particular outcome, but not knowing how to make it happen. And so that was a really interesting, commonality, I guess, and realize that this happens to more than one person.
Thanks for sharing, Meredith.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anyone else would like to share?
This is Lisa Ann. Like in our group, it was a lot about, again, if you're not communicating what you expect, then of course you're going to feel frustrated because you're not getting what you want, but you also haven't verbalized that. And also understanding that sometimes people have different values related to quality of an email or, the quality of a document, and taking the time to understand each other's points of view and preferences and sort of the reasoning behind that can help clear up a lot of that frustration. So even though you might find yourself getting frustrated again because you've already had that conversation, there's a little voice in your brain that can say, but wait, we already know that so-and-so likes to do it this way. And over time, that voice can be a little bit stronger and preempt the frustration feelings that might come about.
No, thanks for sharing. And the one thing I would say to that is, like, this work is so hard. Like, that's one of the things that has come up for me. Like, it's so hard sometimes to, like, realize that people just, like, why don't you know that? So, yeah, so it's a good check. Anyone else would like to share? And then I guess, Lisa, let me know about time, because I'm not, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Just a kind of quick layer on that is, you guys don't know the number of times that I talk to someone, an executive, a boss, and they're like, well, they should know. And I'm like, oh, that thing again. So actually, it's your responsibility.
We have that exact thing at my company where we actually ask about clarity on things like, when should we come to work? Because you seem upset about us rolling in at 9:15. They're like, you should know the answer. And they still won't tell us. I'll just figure it out.
What's that phrase? To assume makes an ass out of you and me.
And if you do it, I find that if you assume or make lots of assumptions at work, you're probably doing it at home. Like it's a habit that you're kind of spreading around, a little disease you spreading around, and then you have all these assumptions. And I think anyone that struggles with anxiety, I know I do. When Cesar said you start making up stories in your head, I'm like, oh, he's talking to me, because I will make up a whole movie about what happened, and none of it is real. And then you just have to make sure you're not operating in that. So I think it's really important that you do that.
That is so true. I've definitely made up my whole movies, about some situation. Somebody's a terrible person, or they're really, disrespecting me, and then finding out that's not true at all.
Right. Well, and so often those stories, I mean, Cesar can correct me if I'm wrong, but I find like those stories are often, it's the way the brain already has a story about reality. People don't respect me. People don't like me. I'm not lovable. Cancel. So the, so the brain is a pattern making machine, and it's just looking for, to be, that affirmation, that story to be reinforced. and then it sees it in a situation, and then it tells you, your other part of your brain, oh, see that person doesn't respect you. See, I'm right. We don't get respect.
Lisa, you're talking to me. Story of my life.
Totally. And to be clear, sometimes that's the certainty narrative of like, you're so sure this is what's going on. It's actually true. Like, that person, whatever, but you've made it, and like, it's much more likely to be fragile because all your other assumptions may be wrong, or you're not actually checking in if that's the case, and so it's just always good to go and get the data. Like, hey, when you didn't call on me in the meeting, was it because you just weren't aware of me? And I read that as disrespect. Oh no, I just blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so we have a few more minutes in this regroup, and I'm getting a question from the chat, Cesar. Someone asks, I've noticed that my boss often jumps to conclusions with BSL narratives. How can we learn to communicate with them to avoid this? Yeah, it's a great question. If you're, you have a boss that you see kind of like get into the state, and you can kind of see it in people's bodies. They're like, ugh, and it shows up as different things: anger, shame, fear. The best thing you can do is to stay within your, like, centered yourself, so you can actually be asking good questions, because those states are contagious. Like, confusion breeds more confusion. But if you stay there and you're like, you just ask clarifying questions. Oh, you think John is lazy? How come? What's the data that you have that creates that judgment? And then they'll either find some good data or kind of like bluster around, and it'll help them calm down to start to get logical, or like, or a move I always use, like, come back to the goal. So what's the goal that we're discussing in this context? In organizations, it almost always makes sense. Like, the meeting has a reason, the work has a reason, and then you can realign with the goal rather than the story about the person or the thing that's not working. Mm-hmm. But like, how do you help someone who's your boss understand that they're kind of being BSL without insulting them to the point where they want to get rid of you?
Yeah, you just trigger them more if you're like, it seems like you're telling a story about this. That's not really going to work so well, right? And right, there's limited power we have in that situation, and the thing that I think most helps is if you regulate yourself, right? Because the states are contagious, and if you're both in this frustrated state and you're trying to get him to be right, then you're also in certainty. He's the problem right now. He's wrong. He's telling BSL narratives. Okay, all of a sudden we're both in this place. So if I can stay centered and be like, wait, so what are we trying to accomplish here? Oh, this meeting is about, the funding proposal we have to get out next week. What's the most important thing to get out that funding proposal? Is it really Jerry's fault? Like, let's put that aside. It's that place to stay in, like, the logical mind. If you're able to do that and bring a person back to that state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can see how that would take some guts, especially if you're trying to talk to your boss. But I'm sure even this little thing like, hey, I noticed in that email you sent me, it seemed like you were a little annoyed with me. Maybe we can have, maybe we can talk about, how I could be more helpful to you or something like that.
Yeah.
I, being a CEO myself, I definitely appreciate it when my staff come to me and say, hey, how can I do that better for you? Because I recognize that you got frustrated there.
That's so good to hear that. That's so good to know that from your standpoint.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for someone to be brave enough to call that out,
nice.
Is huge.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel heard and seen and respected, and then we can have a dialogue about it, and then it's not a big deal. And then you can talk about it later, because it's already out in the open.
Yeah. And this is why I love language of confusion, because you could also just say, hey, when I got that email, I felt confused. And it's kind of, it's like a non aggressive word. And I read this and I interpreted that maybe you were feeling frustrated. Did I read that right?
As a woman, though, I would say I have fear approaching my male boss about that particular subject. So I think it's great. Like, I love what Lisa Ann said. but without knowing ahead of time if he would be receptive to that, there's so much anxiety that comes up.
Okay, so Camille.
No, thanks, Susan. And we'll definitely, I think once we get back into this room, we can follow up there. But we're just going to get back into the breakout rooms. But Cesar, I would love to like hear your input on that because I also have similar feelings. So now we're going to go into a breakout groups of 4 or 5. And the question there is going to be, Lisa Ann, is it going to be in the little box?
Yeah, so one of our producers is going to put it in the chat here for you.
Awesome. Got it.
It is choose one. Go ahead.
Okay. It's a choose one industry-wide goal. So one could be ending oil dependency. I hear people like zero waste, just anything that you've heard a lot in the industry. And think about the opponents to that goal. So what is your default narrative about that person? Is it a BSO narrative? What might be the reality? Given what we've learned today, how should the solution or the goal itself change? So you will have facilitators in the rooms here, which are my good friends, and so they'll introduce themselves once they're in there. But buckle in. I like when they say that when you're getting dispersed. So buckle in. Here we go.
All right, and quick correction, we're gonna have groups of 3 to 4. So you're not missing people. We're just going a little bit smaller this time. All right, buckle in.
able to talk about different ways in which we are finding options and really giving nuance to these conversations. And then we also talked about how this is not only related to consumer products, but also it spills over into policy and how policies can incentivize more renewable and cleaner options. So that was our discussion and it was really fun. I'll open it up. I don't know if anybody else has to add, but we're at time.
Well, thank you so much. Yo, that's exactly like the only thing I'll say, and then we can wrap up. Is like that's exactly why I wanted to do an event, or like even as an organization do an event like this, because we have to pull out the nuances to find better solutions. Period. Right? If we make everyone to like, if we demonize everyone, then like we're not going to get anywhere. So I'm really excited for this conversation, and I'm not supposed to be closing it, so I'm going to pass it to Lisa to close. If you want to, are we out of time?
I thought you were going to close. I was so excited. You're just going to go right in there and close it.
I don't know what to do.
Okay, I'll take it for you.
Thank you.
So thank you everybody for joining us today, taking an hour out of your evening. And so here's some contact information for our organizations. Should you want to follow up with any of us, one of our producers is going to put the link to our newsletter into the chat if they've not already. So you can click on that and join our newsletter if you haven't already. And that's the best way to get the updates on all the events that we're doing. Also, we have some volunteering opportunities available if anyone's interested to work on some board committees and help further our mission. Mostly we need support around events and planning them, like events like this, and also marketing. So marketing events, those are our 2 main needs. So if you have any interest, please contact me or Camille or Melanie or any of the WCS facilitators that were on this call. And I think with that, I want to thank Cesar for joining us and all of our facilitators. Thank you all also for joining us and handling those breakout rooms for us. This was really powerful, and I'm excited to for these learnings to be carried out through people's lives as we all go back to the real world. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.